Hello and welcome along to the Dads in Business video podcast series. My name is Rob Taylor from Dads in Business, the space where we have conversations and discussions around all things being a busy working dad, with the aim of helping those dads bring the best of themselves to work and to home. To do that, we talk to guests and specialists in their areas about all sorts of topics, from business development, personal development, managing finances, the roles that we have in life, and ultimately how to be potentially a better parent through practical tips and advice from experts who do that for a living. And that's what we have with us today. I'm delighted to be joined by someone who's going to help us understand more about the inner workings potentially of our children and how, when they don't listen to us, we might be able to have better conversations with them. I know I'm going to get loads to this conversation. Gemma, good morning to you. If you could give us a little introduction and background to yourself, it'd be really great to help the listeners out and what we're going to cover today.
Okay, well, good morning. Thank you, Rob, first of all, for inviting me on today. So I'm Gemma from Awkward Conversations. I'm a teen coach, so I particularly work with teens who've experienced bullying, peer and friendship issues, with the aim to sort of help them navigate the challenges of the school years, to help build their confidence, to kind of keep them in a creative space and just help them tap into their own inner resources, their strengths, their skills, so that they can then come up with their own solutions to their problems and to create what they want to create in their lives.
It sounds like a really relevant, important, crucial role that you fill, and a gap that you've got, because I know a lot of your work's around teen conversations. My kids are 8, 6 and 4, so I've got all that good fun stuff to come. But I'm sure my eldest, he seems more advanced than an 8-year-old, so I have a lot of awkward conversations with him as well. I just think their world's changed, which is what we're going to, I guess, uncover. But in terms of a bit of your background, Gemma, why is it you do what you do? Why have you fallen into this space? Why do you see it so important to your work to do what you do?
Okay, so growing up, obviously we're trying to make sense of the world, and I had an older sister, and I became very aware that we were very, very different. From a young age, was kind of compared to her. She was much more quieter. I was on sort of the verge of hyperactiveness, and it started with things like, why can't you sit still? Why can't you just be quiet like your sister? So from a young age, kind of that sort of comparison had started. And then got to high school, and my sister was one of those girls. She was very pretty. She was blonde, booby, very popular, but very nice as well. And then there was me, this sort of 12-year-old, gawky, short hair, lanky 12-year-old girl. And it started with, oh my God, how can that be your sister? She's really pretty, you're ugly, no one will ever want you. So on a sort of daily basis, I was kind of being say picked on, but like how I looked was the chosen way for someone to be mean. And by all means, like, I wasn't innocent, I was quite good at comebacks, but still what they said had a massive impact. And looking back, I felt quite jealous, quite resentful of my sister. I thought her life is so much better because of how she looks. You grow up with, in the 90s, there wasn't social media, but we had all the magazines, More magazine, Just 17. So I was reading all these older girl magazines about how you needed to look, what you needed to do. I think that's had quite a massive impact on obviously how I felt about myself compared with everything else. So then growing up, every time like a relationship didn't work out or something didn't go in my favor, I just thought, well, if I look different, then things would be better for me. And it had those words just had such a massive knock-on effect to my adult life. And then obviously there was no intervention. No one really, talked about how you felt. And then when I was 26, and my sister was 29, she had a brain hemorrhage and she died. And again, there was no sort of like 15 years ago, there was no kind of intervention around grief. I didn't know what to do with these big emotions. I'd never been taught what to do with emotions or how to feel or it being okay to feel anything. And all that came up was, why her? It should have been me. Who would want me to be the one? Like, she's so much better than me. So all those kind of inner beliefs just really popped back up to the surface. And again, not knowing what to do with them, best way I can describe it is like a ball that you're trying to hold under the water, and at some point is going to pop up and hit you in the face. So I kind of pressed all this grief and feelings and everything down underneath, walked like down so not to feel it. And I kind of thought, well, you know, if I fix everything I don't like on the outside, that would make my life easier. I was in a very unhappy relationship. So I, you know, had some plastic surgery, fixed the things I didn't like, and thought that would solve everything. But I still just didn't feel like I deserved to be in the world. I just thought I still don't have to, my sister's not here, so if I am, I need to prove that I'm worthy enough to be here. So I threw myself into work. Work was going really well. I'd managed to get out of a very unhappy relationship. I'd used work and exercise and sports as a way to sort of distract myself from how I was feeling. And then it got to about 2016 and I felt burnt out. And I thought, if I don't change something, like I feel tired on the inside. If someone has said to me, Gem, here's a little door, everything will disappear, I would have quite happily have gone. And I thought, right, okay, that's when stuff needs to change. So I kind of gave up half my work, focused on me. And yeah, over the last couple of years, it's just kind of evolved into thinking, do you know what, if there'd just been some help or some guidance or some awareness when I was in those early teenage years, so many things could have been different. So yeah, they say be who you needed when you were 12, 13. So I guess that's kind of where I've kind of come back to. I thought I wanted to work with people around grief, but I did have a 20-year career in the fitness industry, which was actually really fun. So to go into grief just seemed too extreme, but teenagers, they're brilliant. Like I really enjoy. I know for a lot of coaches, the thought of teens is a big no-no, but yeah, for me, they're really good and they're really interesting. So that's kind of how I've got to where I am.
Wow. What a journey. And thanks for being so open and sharing how you got to where you did. I think it's that lived experience thing it's often I think the best way to create that or identify the space, most definitely, but also create better connections with the teams that you work with, because you've been there, I guess. And sometimes I'd assume kids are like, well, why are you worthy to speak to me, almost, you know, because if not, it could be a bit preachy. I'd assume, you know, what I've found with the Dads in Business work, and a sort of similar but different vein, is that we try to create conversation and space before it becomes a problem. So it's before people start to see that open door and you can go over there and it'll all go away. Let's start talking about things earlier, because, you know, the problem shared is a problem halved and all that adage. But if people just feel like they're alone and it's just them, it must get so difficult, especially when there is baked in comparisons. That guilt seems to be coming through from your sort of introduction and description there, and that suppression of feelings as well. You know, we hear it as blokes, I'm sure women hear similar, but we'll hear things like man up or just brush it under the carpet, just get on with it. You know, boys don't cry, all that sort of stuff. So there's suppression in that side too. And I think if you can start, as you are, helping kids at that age where a lot's going on in their lives, right?
Yeah.
You can help them have better conversations through your own lived experience, then, you know, what an opportunity they've got to develop themselves by working with someone like you. So really good grounding, I think, for the conversation moving forward. And you mentioned about your identity through like comparisons, and I was listening and saying, I kind of say that to my kids. Why can't you be more like him? I've got 3 boys, but yeah, why can't you be more like him? Why are you behaving like that? Why can't you behave like him? And I assume that that's putting something in them somewhere that has the potential to be damaging in future lives. But it's just so reactive to say, isn't it? Why can't you do that? And I guess that's creating their frame, their lens, if you like. But there's so many external factors, isn't there? It's how is a child's identity being challenged now, do you think, in today's world? What's going on in their space that we as parents of a different generation need to start to understand, do you think?
From observation, talking to parents and for teens, on one hand, there's like a pressure to know from quite a young age what they want to do career-wise, because they seem to pick exams and courses sooner than what we ever seem to do. So kind of pressure around what you want to be. I spoke to one girl once, and she around like with the mental health stuff, and she didn't feel that she had any anxiety, but because her friends at school all had anxiety, she then thought, what's wrong with me because I don't have it? So I think sometimes it's great that we're talking more about mental health, but there's the pressure of labeling or having something, and obviously gender issues now. I guess that was something that we never really thought about or had to think about when we were younger. So trying to find our path with gender, are we something else? Are we heterosexual? Like trying to figure that out as well. And then I suppose the biggest one kind of goes back to how we look. That seems to be massive. And I think where it's changed now is that boys are feeling the pressure as well. So I think maybe when I was growing up, how you looked, your hair, your figure was predominantly seemed to be a woman issue. But now it seems that boys are sort of experience it.
And is that still a thing then? Because I assumed that this next generation were growing up almost with an ingrained purpose within them. They were more value-led. But what you're suggesting is perhaps that all that you need to look a certain way, you need to do a certain thing, is perhaps even more accessible. So it's even more, I guess, obvious to play those comparisons out. You don't look like this person on Instagram, therefore you're wrong. Is that happening still or more, do you think, than it was in the 90s?
What I find that they seem to do more now is they all look the same. So if there's a certain look, they all look the same. So I know like when we were growing up, there were certain fashion trends, but within that trend, we'd have maybe our own little bit of style within it. Whereas now it's like, sometimes I see these groups of girls and they're literally just they're all the same. And it's almost like they're doing it to themselves. So yes, social media has an influence, but within their actual friendship groups, they're doing it to them. They're doing it to themselves. So within the group, they want to look a certain.
Yeah, I've just scribbled down here. I've written down music genres because when I was in school, when was I born? 84. So I was in secondary school come 95, something like 95, 96. It was for me, looking back now, when, all music's available, everything's on demand, everything's there. That's made it harder, I think. I can't speak from it because I'm 38 now, but to tag on to an identity, because I guess you'd call me an indie kid back in the 90s. I liked Oasis and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But some other people liked hip hop, and some other people liked dance and trance. There were like genres which people grouped to and aligned to. And the only place you could be a part of that was in the venues and in the clubs as you get a bit older. You always went to the rock club, you went to the dance club, you went to the house club. Whereas now everything, like you say, just seems the same. There are no genres. It's just like, this is it. And I just wonder if, challenging your identity, there is nothing you can actually identify yourself to, because there's no cultures, there's no countercultures.
It's a set thing to be, really, is that?
Yeah. So it must be so difficult. And there was a couple more bits you mentioned there talking about schools. And you mentioned anxiety. I was going to ask two bits coming off that. Do you think schools focus solely on kids getting jobs to achieve the school's ambition of success?
I guess schools have got to hit targets and, the grade levels. I guess there's the pressure that they need to try and channel the child into what they think at this time that the child needs to be. And maybe one day it'll be more kind of, rather than a child having to do a bit of every lesson, that they will be more focused on actually what are they kind of drawn to do, interested to do, and maybe it'll go that way.
Yeah, because I guess from my perspective of working for myself, I wish they'd, and looking back for what I think was missing, I know we're not talking about the school system today, but I think money management would be huge. I think teaching people about running a business or exploring entrepreneurship would be a great addition to the school, because it wasn't until later life that, I always knew deep down I wanted to work for myself somewhere, but I didn't really know what that meant. I want to work for myself. What does it mean? Don't know, get a job. And the career service at school were always like pushing you into a job.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I always remember one of my friends, my best mate, he said, I think this was 17, 18, he used to play poker a lot online. It's like, what do you want to be? They said, a professional gambler. and they didn't like that one. And then one of my other friends, he was a bit older than me, he was right into cars. And he said, I want to design cars, want to draw cars. And they laughed it off and said, no, really, what do you want to do? And the irony of that is the school where we went is now a car garage, and he went off to design cars for, I think it was Bentley, moving forward.
Wow.
So there just seems, I don't know, for me, there seems to be a lot of suppression. Like you said, they guide you down a path that they want you to go, not what's best for you. And I think if that's continuing now, that must be hard for kids as well, when they see everyone being a YouTuber, when they see everyone making all the money they need without working 9 to 5s.
Yeah.
And then the school system says, go get a job. How can we?
I think it also depends on your school. I suppose there are some schools that are going to help children become sort of the more entrepreneurial into their gifts and their skills. But yeah, for a lot, and you know, they talk about all these jobs that aren't even going to be available in the next 5, 10. So we need to make sure that we're not training children for jobs that aren't going to exist.
Exactly that. Yeah, that job might not even be there in 15 years.
Yeah.
So what are we training these kids up to do? It's no wonder that they're challenged and pushed and pulled left, right, and centre, because they can probably see that happening already. And you mentioned also as well, I guess, which tags onto that a little bit, around anxiety. And you said something interesting where, I don't know if you've spoke to people like this or it's what you've observed. I don't have anxiety, therefore I feel like I'm left out.
Well, I think sometimes they get a little bit confused. You know, when you started a new school or when you went and did something different, there was always like a bit of anxiety or excitement. And I think for some, they get confused that sort of, oh God, I'm starting school or a new year is anxiety. And is that a normal, which yes, it probably is very normal, or what is actually like anxiety, where they feel like a real sense of panic or stress. And this girl that I spoke to, she was aware of sort of things that made her feel a bit sort of anxious, but she could get through them. But where for her friends, they were like big deals. And therefore it's like, oh, should I be feeling more worried about this? Because my friends are, but actually I don't feel like that. And is that okay? So yeah, just an observation from talking with her.
Yeah, and you know, these teens, I guess you speak mostly to teens. Rewind from time of where we are now, 2.5 years ago, when March 2020 happened, and then the ensuing lockdowns and everything. How has that changed the way that kids see the world, do you think, in your experience? What's changed in them by being locked down, restricted, no school? How have they changed the way they communicate, their habits, their expectations? Are they looking at work as a path, or do they want to experience other things? What's happening in their lives since 2020, do you think?
I think there's been, I mean, obviously for some, lockdowns were great because they didn't have to sit exams and they didn't have to go to school. And for some children that worked, and obviously for others it didn't. I think there's like a bit of a sense of kind of in schooling, like being left behind and then trying to catch up to where they are. Obviously for young people, it was more around like not being able to see their friends, not being able to see family. So those who maybe might have lost grandparents, not being able to have those last moments. I know one girl I worked with kind of got hit by that a bit, not being able to say goodbye to family. And I think, and also not being able to do their hobbies and their interests because they can't go out, or they couldn't go out. And I feel that there's definitely a lot more fear, because we're bombarded with the fear story all the time. And if they are, again, it also depends on the parents, what level of fear the parents are living in with, whether it's cost of living now, whether it's climate change, like whatever it is that parents are worried about, then obviously the more worried they are, the more the children are going to be experiencing that as well. I definitely think there's a higher level of sort of uncertainty about the future, and that's possibly giving rise to more sort of like fear, what's gonna social anxiety, so struggling to kind of go into places just to be served by someone, in a shop like that, sort of going out and talking to friends. I know obviously they've been communicating via phone, but that's a bit different than the face-to-face. So sometimes it's been helping them around, you know, starting up conversations again, like just being interested in people, just to kind of get things moving again. But definitely a level of fear.
I have several chats, as I'm sure you do, on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Where pretty much now, majority of my friendships are via WhatsApp. You know, it's male loneliness is a real thing, and to a point, I feel like I fall into that trap. It's easier to talk to your mates through WhatsApp, but it's also immediate to talk to your friends through WhatsApp. If you see those 2 blue ticks on WhatsApp and you don't get a reply, how does it make you feel? It can become challenging, and that's me as a 37-year-old. You think, why aren't they replied? They're ignoring me. That's annoying. So I wonder how that plays out for kids when there is this sense of immediate response. And is there that expectation that they have to reply and respond 24/7? Are they waking up or not going to sleep even because they don't want to miss out on something? Is that things that you've seen as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, hearing stories of kids up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning because they've got to respond to a message. You know, some just because they just want to stay connected, like just because they enjoy having that interaction. And then there's some that are worried, if I don't, you know, what am I going to miss out on? Will they speak to me tomorrow at school? Will they ask me to do? So again, it's kind of what is motivating them to have to be on there. And then sometimes there's a bit of a catch, because if they can't respond like quickly enough, and then it kind of goes a bit too long, is it then too awkward to reply because they've left it longer than they would not? So they're again minute by minute trying to sort of work out what is the right thing to do to keep and maintain their friendships going. But I think the biggest thing it's doing is affecting sleep. And I think it's something like 50% of a lot of this sort of mental health things could be halved if children got more sleep. Because they need, like, you know, we say 8 hours, but their bodies and their brains are changing. They need more like 10. And they don't tend to want to go to sleep till a bit later, but obviously they're getting up early for school. So if they're not getting the amount of sleep that they need, then they're not going to be in the best state for the next day at school. So
as a parent, what do we do? Do we just take the phone off them at night, but then we're creating more anxiety because they can't talk to their mates? Or do you encourage almost like creating a boundary that puts them in the responsible position to say, look, you can talk to your mates via this, but think about what you're doing tomorrow. So to try and make the decision theirs, or do you just take the means of communication away? What do you see parents doing, and is there a right way to deal with that?
So it's not, so if you take a phone away, you're not taking the phone away, you're taking their friends away. So, you know, in an ideal world, one suggestion that I heard that, you know, would be brilliant is that all parents of a friendship group say, you know, at 10 o'clock, phones off, and then everyone kind of adheres to that rule in, you know, in the ideal world. Otherwise, it's having, I guess it's knowing your own child. Some children, you know, it's easier to say, oh, I'm sorry, Rob, I can't talk to you because my mum takes my phone away from me. Like, God, she's so mean. So you can almost have a conversation and say, look, blame it on me.
Yeah, blame me.
You know, you kind of see you and your child, you kind of had that sort of, look, this is going to help you, so we'll blame it on me. You can tell your friends that. They're not going to know any different. And it's so unfair. You know, you can play that sort of role to your friends if that stops you worrying about how it's going to affect your friendships. Or otherwise, you know, give them a, you know, one of those choices that, you know, you can have your, you know, phone till 9:30, or you can have it till 10, but I want you in bed to go to sleep. And then they think, well, they've got a choice, but there's only 2, and then they have to pick one. I guess it's kind of knowing your child, but definitely there has to be some boundaries around it, because it is going to affect them in the long term.
Yeah, and just as a question, I guess, around tech, when have you seen kids have phones these days? Because I was 16, I think. There was no social media. There was no. You could text, you could phone. That's what a phone used to be.
Yeah.
Before it became everything. And even my 8-year-old said to me, "Can I have a phone?" And I said to her, well, who are you going to message? Who else has got a phone? He said, well, no one. I said, so who are you going to message and talk to on it? Angelos, his best mate. Like, well, you see him anyway, play with him. Don't message him. And they meet their friends on like Roblox or something. And they teach internet safety, which yeah, I'm quite comfortable with them playing Roblox. But at what point are you seeing kids get their own autonomy in that handset, that device to the world? When's that happening now? Because back in my day, as we'll go on to in a second, I was 16. I never used to have a phone. Why do you need one at 8 years old? Do they need one at 8 years old?
I think for what I've seen is that by high school, like when they start high school, and obviously they start high school a year earlier than what I ever did. I think it tends to be, you know, maybe it's under if they need to contact me, they've got a phone. There might be children that have them younger these days, but I think definitely when they start high school, that seems to be the time when they get their kind of 12 would be the.
Yeah, so I really want to hold out till year 7, which would be secondary school. For us, I think that'd be nice, because you don't want to restrict their communication. No. We have to appreciate that they communicate differently. It's more, I guess, rapid. It's intense. It's non-stop, and you know, we can't change the tide, can we? We can't change what's happening, which I guess does lead into the next sort of topic about what we can do as parents to better try and understand, because the worst phrase, I hate it, is back in my day, or you never used to be like this when you were young. Yeah, you know, I can hear my in-laws saying it now. Oh, they didn't misbehave like you didn't misbehave like this.
Yeah,
they are now. Things have changed, and I think how can we as parents practice better empathy, I guess, without saying the dreaded back in my day, or I struggled, so you must struggle too. I want to make it easier for my kids, but likewise, I don't want to spoil them rotten.
Yeah.
I also appreciate they've got a lot of challenges going on in their own lives. And I think my opinion on it would be the difference or the rate of change between my generation and my kids' generation is way beyond what the rate of change between me and my parents was. Because it's a different world now. I don't know what platforms are and everything now. They're everywhere, how they're consuming stuff. So how can we as parents practice better empathy so our kids trust us to talk to us more, ultimately?
I think
question.
Like a lot of, you know, teens will say, oh, my parents don't listen to me. So I think we need to kind of take that as so what can we do to listen to children more without trying to jump in and fix and solve and give these like, you know, phrases from, well, we didn't have, like, as you said, we didn't have these problems, or this wasn't, you know, referring it back. So, you know, if your child is still open and talking to you, first of all, that's great. So being like tuned into them, and then just listening with, they call it like a heart with ears. So listen, obviously, to respond and not to react. And sometimes the child just wants to get it out, and that just might actually be, there might not need to be anything else that you need to do other than being that listening ear. Or once they have had a chance and they have felt heard and they felt seen, then you know, if you don't know what to do for the best, you can just ask them, you know, what would be the best way that I can help you right now? What would you like me to do to help you? And just kind of keep those questions really open. And even if they don't know, at least you've asked. And then that just then holds the space. And once they've kind of had their moment and maybe their nervous system is back on track or in the calm space, then you can then look at maybe coming up with some solutions of what you know, you might not do them, but what you could do, what could be helpful, what needs they need to help get met. Looking at values, I think that's really important. So as a family, having, you know, what are your family values? What do you live by as a family? Why is that important to you all? And just having, you know, family time together, having that quality time together, because, you know, when you're engaged in sort of activities, it's more open, there's more fun. I think is probably one of the best things you can do to keep empathy, and also, you know, being able to see different perspectives and opinions, but coming from a loving and compassionate place. And I always say, if you if your child's coming out with something and you don't agree, then just saying, well, that's interesting. And then it just allows them to, you've not cut them off or shut them down. You're allowing them to express their opinion. And the more they talk, the more you're going to find out and understand what's of value and important to them.
It's interesting because a lot of suggestions you offer there, we see play out in corporate world all the time. Oh, I'll learn to have better conversations. I'll learn to improve my leadership through listening better. I'll learn to ask open questions. But we go home and we bark orders at me, and we turn into this like sergeant major barking. So it's not surprising when we get like butted heads almost. And I think there's lessons to be learned from our professional setting that we can take home. And I've suggested this to my wife before, sort of say, look, if I can learn lessons at work and bring them back, it's like, well, but this is home, it's not work. And I get that, but I think there's got to be application there, isn't there, about how you can talk to these little people with respect, appreciate they've got an opinion. Because for me, what it might do is expose us as parents to some of our own vulnerabilities as well. Because I guess you want to wrap your kids in cotton wool. You don't want to see them upset. You want to be the one that can fix everything. And sometimes I guess you can't fix everything. And that's okay. You're saying it's all right to say, you know what, I don't know at the moment, but we'll work it through. I guess it's challenging our lens on it, because I look back to my parents and think, well, did they ever ask me that sort of? They weren't strict by any means, and they gave me the frame to operate, but I never really saw their vulnerabilities in that respect. Always, my mum and dad will fix it. My dad passed away when I was like 20, so to that point, my dad will fix it. He'd struggle after that. And I guess, it's challenging us as parents to talk differently, I think. Really a curious relationship between the two. Because for one of them, tech didn't exist like it did.
No.
So we have to appreciate these things are happening. Like I said, you can't change the tide. And is tech a parent's worst nightmare? Or is it just something that we're going to have to learn to live with, as this is the way our kids are now? It's how they communicate. As communication changed so fundamentally that us as parents have to embrace that better.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, there's no going back from technology now. It's only going to keep going forwards. It's never going to kind of go, it's not going to go backwards. And although obviously social media does, it does have the negatives, like we talked about earlier, like the comparisons and everything's filtered and everything looks perfect. But also for children, it's how they connect, it's how they do stay in contact. And as much as there's stuff that they can look up that isn't good for them, they also can look up other stuff and information that could be of benefit, especially around like the mental health, and maybe that kind of, if there's other people in the same boat, then it does make you feel a bit less lonely, that you're not the only one going through difficult circumstances or situations. So it's going to have to be embraced. And I think depending on your family, family's going to have to come up with their own ways to deal with it, so that it becomes a useful tool and not something that pulls the family apart.
Yeah, there's a funny sort of application of that, where they each have these little fire tablets at home. So we give them that for a bit because they do some homework through it. But then they're on their YouTube, or they're on their Roblox, or they're on their games, whatever it is. And I'll say, get off your iPad. You've been on it too long. Go and play outside. It's sunny. Go and play. Go and use your imagination. And they'll sit like zombies on them. So I'll take it off them, which I probably shouldn't do. We should make an agreement. But I'll say, do some homework. Here's your iPad. So it's like, I'll take this away from you for fun, but I'm going to give it you back for this. And we cannot escape tech. It's an incredible thing, but the YouTube videos, the games, they're designed to keep you hooked, aren't they?
Yeah.
These things are recorded, are designed to make you click next, to click the ads, because it's how these content producers make their revenues, isn't it? Through ads and the freemium models that we all see. So there is a balance to be had. And I think we can overreact, or it can become too easy for us to cave in. There's times when I've had a busy day at work. To be honest, I can't quite be bothered with the kids. I'll give them a tablet. a device, not a tablet. Not like a sleeping pill or anything. No, I'll give them a device. I guess leading on from the listening topic that we touched on and the empathy topic and the lens that we approach our parenting from, is there a risk that we can become too either dismissive, oh, you'll be fine, there you go, or almost too catastrophic? We overreact to everything. Is there a risk that we become one or the other? And are any of them better than the other, or each as risky, if that makes sense?
So if your child's come to you and they're struggling with something or they've got a challenge, if you're too dismissive, you'll be okay, make some new friends, it'll be all right. Like it might not be all right, and they're going to feel like, oh, they don't care, they're not bothered, or I'm being a burden, so I'm being literally I'm being dismissed. So, and then obviously on the flip side of coming in too hard, they then might have the fear of, if you're that parent's like, right, that's it, I'm going to ring the school, I'm going to talk to so and so's parents, then the whole situation, they've now lost control of it because mum or dad has completely come in, overreacted, this is what's happening, and therefore the risk would be on either one, that the child says, well, there's either no point, or I can't risk what mum or dad's reaction is going to be. So the risk then is, well, now who do I talk to? Or I'll just bottle it down, I won't talk to anyone about it, I'll try and work it out for myself. And then your child stops talking, and that's when the risk of them withdrawing or becoming more anxious or stressed, these things then take a hold. So obviously it's finding that middle path where you can sit and you can listen, and as I said earlier, you kind of come up with the solutions together. And even if in the end you say, do you know what, I really think that this is a situation where I do need to speak, at least inform the child so the child knows exactly what is going to happen. And in an ideal, you would come up with something that you can do or help them to do, so that they're taking responsibility and building that resilience, that they are solution focused, they can find an answer. And even if what you come up with actually wasn't the best idea and wasn't the best thing you can do, it actually doesn't matter. What matters is that you had a go at doing it. So it's the children that don't have any support, or they're always going to come off worse. So
yeah, I'm seeing it's, I think under the umbrella of treating the kids with respect is what I'm getting from this, is ultimately listening better. So practice as parents our listening skills.
Yeah.
Ultimately, yes, that respect, they are a little person, let's treat them with respect of what's going on in their world. It's change, let's try and understand that more, with the view of building their resilience. And I guess you said something there interesting, is like, even if you think the time is right to go and speak to the school, which I guess it will be, don't do it behind their backs.
Mm-hmm.
So get their agreement.
Yeah.
Or even if they don't agree,
they know.
Aware, get them awareness. Yeah, because we are parents. Sometimes we have to appreciate we have the best intention, and we are better educated than this. So I guess at some point we have to draw a line. But even if they don't agree, make them aware.
Yeah. And
set those joint expectations. I think it's really interesting. I think that will find the middle ground. So I can probably be the more dismissive one in our pair. My wife's probably the more overreactive one. Somewhere in the middle, we need to say, okay, well, if I'm too dismissive, what can I do to help to listen better, to show I've listened, and to show I'm understanding? If she's going too hard and too reactive, okay, well, what can I do to help understand the situation? Does it need that response? So a lot of this comes onto parental responsibility, I guess, as well.
Yeah, it's always what's going on inside for you, isn't it? So, if you're coming home from work and you are tired, it might just be that you need to go and have a 5-minute, a recharge, so that you can come back and be present with your children. Or if, same for your partner, everybody needs that kind of little bit of recharge time, so that you then can come back into the situation.
Yeah, with the right frame of mind, not that dismissive side. Because I'm guilty of it. I never profess to be a perfect parent, but I've gone home from a busy day at work and fobbed it off because you don't want it. You're tired. I haven't got the mental space. I need to try and recharge or transition better into that parenting role now, and leave work behind. It's an ongoing practice. It really is. And there's times when you'll have seen it. Kids can just be little buggers. And they need telling every now and then. But I think as a rule and as a goal, listening, respect to build resilience, agreement and expectations, for me, is what I'm taking from what you're telling me. I think it's fascinating how we can treat these little people with better respect.
I mean, I don't have children, so I'll just make that clear. But I mean, I came from a mum who massively overreacted and everything was about how it made her feel. So all I did then is like, well, I just won't tell you anything, and I'll just try and work it all out myself. And obviously that then just reflected into my adult,
that manifests into,
okay, I'll sort it out myself. I don't know what to do. I'll sort it. Everything just has that knock on. Without being extremist, but
no, it's true, isn't it? We are what our parents give us, I guess, and I think that's the challenge that I'm trying to navigate. What do I want my kids to be? How do I want them to show up and understand in a world that I don't really understand? They certainly don't get it. So how can we muddle through it together? There's just a couple more bits I wanted to try and touch on before we wrap up. One, I guess, is a slightly more sensitive issue around kids, one that I've not experienced in mine yet. Hopefully I never will. Kids get bullied. It happens. It's horrible. How, as parents, can we start to see that? What are the signs? What are the telltale signs that our kids might be having a bit of trouble, or might be the victim, or the bullier? How can we tell what's going on?
So again, this goes back to kind of being more in tune with your child to recognize patterns, because it's only when a pattern of behavior goes out we then like, oh, this isn't how they, are you okay? I mean, physical bullying might be more obvious because there could be cuts or bruising, damage to clothing, property, lost, money gone. Like physical bullying can be a little bit more obvious. If it's more sort of on the emotional side, so particularly with girls, there's that fine line between sort of relational bullying and girl turbulence. So one thing you need to determine is that if, particularly if, someone's got a daughter and she comes home and she's telling the big story about her day and what happened and who said what and she did this, and then 2 weeks, bringing all this story in, is trying to determine, is it just girl turbulence or is it bullying? And the difference is, it's bullying if there is a clear intention to cause harm, whether that's physically or emotionally. So, for example, if I don't want to be your friend, might not be bullying. It's just, I just don't want to be friends with you, but you still might be really upset. Where if it's bullying, it might be, I'm not going to be your friend and I'm going to make sure everyone else isn't as well. So it's first of all kind of learning to know the difference. Obvious signs maybe on the boat would be withdrawing, changes in friendships or not hanging out with the same friends, not wanting to do hobbies or activities that they once enjoyed, or to go places that they normally like to go. Just generally withdrawing, isolating, spending more time on their own than what they normally did, or being kind of sketchy about their day, like not really wanting to discuss it or talk about, who they sat with at lunchtime, those sorts of things. But again, as I said, it's just like recognize the patterns, recognize your child's general behavior, and then when something goes amiss, you'll be able to spot something.
And then if you could spot those signs, would you defer back to what we talked about previously with listening, asking questions, or would you sneak away to the school and say, is everything all right, because I've noticed things aren't right at home? Or would you follow that same format to speak to the child first?
That would be child. Yeah. So it could be like, I've noticed you're not hanging around with so-and-so. Is everything okay? Or you seem really quiet, or, pick out something that there's evidence. And then, so you're not just like, oh, you're so angry. What's got you? You see, something that you've noticed and how it seems that they're feeling. And, they might say, I'm fine. They might not want to, they might be working it through. Tomorrow at school, it might all be fine again. So yeah, it's just, I would say always start with just opening up the conversation.
Yeah,
If they find out you've gone to the school, and then the school and then the parents and then the school have to investigate, before long you could end up with a massive drama that's being created when actually it didn't need to be. And it could make it worse for the child as well.
So we have to catch ourselves almost, because it's a very emotive subject for a parent as well, I imagine, where I think I'm sending my kid to a school where I think they're getting bullied. As a parent, you're going to want to solve that quickly, aren't you? And I guess you've got to take that responsibility in time to listen and ask questions and treat with respect, like we've spoken about before.
Just to add there, Rob, the risk is that if a child has been bullied, there is a risk that to kind of regain like a bit of sense of power is then they can become like the online bullying. So, you know, under the cover of darkness, as it was, and then there's a risk that if a child is bullied and there's no intervention, there's no help there, to feel better about themselves, it's like, right, well, I'll put some nasty comments about so and so. And if the child is the bully, you know, there are some situations, like if a child has gone through a bereavement or family divorce or move, you know, if they don't know how to express how they're feeling, that might come out as being angry or aggressive or saying. So although I'm not saying, you know, make it all about the bully, sometimes we do need to understand that if children are going through difficult situations, they may act out. But otherwise, if a child is bullying, again, look at what's going on possibly in the home. So a lot of stuff is learned behaviour. So if mum or dad or siblings, how everyone's talking to each other, what's acceptable behaviour, the child might just be. But also, you know, unhappy people try and make other people, you know, I was unhappy, and I know that I was probably a horrible little sister. I know I was a horrible little sister towards my big sister, because I just felt so many emotions, and it came out on taking it out on her and my perceived happy life that she had compared to me. So
yeah, so I mean, absolutely. I mean, if you are the bullier, I assume that comes from somewhere. No one's born a bully, I'd imagine. It's probably very learned behaviour from comparisons, from things we learn when we're younger, and so on. But I guess those spotting the signs as parents is important, and we've got to be big enough as parents that if our kid is the one that's doing the bullying, that needs sorting out too, right? Yeah. I just wanted to ask before we start to wrap up, Gemma, is it parents that bring their kids to you? The kids find you? Why do kids speak more openly to you than they might their own parents? What gap are you filling? Okay, so
I tend to get contacted by parents or reach out to parents. That kind of comes through that way. Well, I'm not emotionally attached or charged by anything they're gonna say to me. There's not the risk of me judging them or criticizing them, blaming them, punishing them, or making it their fault as to why something has happened or it's not working. So it's just that, you know, it's that space where they've got a bit of autonomy. They can talk about what they want. They're very clear on confidentiality. Like, I'm not going to tell mum and dad what we've talked about unless there's a risk to harm yourself or other people. So the boundaries are very clear. And also, as teenagers get older, like, it's part of the breaking away, you know, breaking away from being solely with mum and dad. Their peers, what their peers have to say, sort of becomes more important than what mum and dad think. And then, so with me, it's, yeah, they get a chance to sort of listen to or speak to someone else that isn't a parent, which helps them with that breaking away process, which is then going to help them when they go into the world, that they can interact with more people, which is a survival mechanism, really. You know, we need to be able to get on with more people in the wider world once we've broken away from dependency on parents in that way.
And I guess just finally there, I'm gonna a bit of an awkward one for you, but I wanted to try and get 3 things that we can start to do as parents so that our kids might not need to speak to you. How can we, like, 3 quick wins or things we can start to practice today to start having those better, more meaningful conversations with our kids? What can we do?
The Well, the first one I would think of is, okay, what would I have liked? Sometimes it's actually nice for a parent to say sorry when they get something wrong. So being able, as a parent, to be able to admit when you've made a mistake and to be able to say sorry for it, so that then they know if they make a mistake or they get something wrong, like that's okay. Like we're not going to get things perfect or right 100%. The other one is, you know, if you're trying to find out some information from them, but you don't want to come across as prying, saying something like, can you tell me more about that? So again, that open-ended question, you're not diving in with a solution, with fixing, you're just allowing them to express more. And I'd probably say also just be aware of where the place within where you're coming from. So having sort of a bit of an awareness internally of what's coming up for you and how that is influencing your response to your child. So being aware sort of somatically, like if your child's telling you something and you're starting to get a bit, you know, if you notice like your chest tighten or your tummy go a bit, like what's that bringing up for you? And seeing, you know, put down the magnifying glass and pick up the mirror. If there's something that your child's doing, you know, look where might we be doing this in our lives? You know, see them as a little reflection, and actually how much you can learn from your child. You know, they are so much more advanced with tech and everything than we are, that, you know, there's so much to be learned from them, as much as how much parents have got to teach their children. But train open and curious, be interested.
Yeah, I love that line, by the way. Put down the magnifying glass and pick up the mirror. I think that might be the title of the video. I think that sums up everything I think we've been speaking about, because it's got to, as parents, start with us, hasn't it? If we want to create future versions of ourselves and create special people moving forward, we've got to start from within. I think that's a great summary. And Gemma, thank you very much for your time. I mean, how can we connect? How can people find you? How can people see more about the work you do? Where can we get that?
So I do have a website. It's awkwardconversations.co.uk. I'm on Instagram as 𝐂𝐲𝐍𝐶𝐂𝐓, and that's where I quite like to share stuff to help the teens. I've got a Facebook page, Awkward Conversations. I'm on LinkedIn. So yeah, so please get in. Even if you just want to have a bit of a chat, just sort of, if anyone wants to sort of just reach out. I'm always open to hear other people's stories. I love to learn in real time. So, you know, what parents are going through, what their children are experiencing, is all great information for me, so that I can stay relevant to what's going on with teens as well. So, and you know, a big well done to parents. Make sure you celebrate yourself, because I think there's a lot of my friends who are parents like tend to berate themselves, and I'll say, you know, celebrate your wins, celebrate, make the memories, have the good times, because they're the ones that are going to carry you through when the hormones and the challenges kick in.
And I've got it all to come as mine get to teens. Gemma, it's been fascinating, eye-opener chatting to you. I think I've got loads of takeaways myself, and I'm sure viewers and listeners will as well. So thank you so much for taking time out this morning to speak to us. Gemma, we'll be in touch very soon. Thank you very much for your time, and you take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gemma. Bye.